Good morning or good evening, dear viewers. My name is Gina Cortopassi, and I am a doctoral student and lecturer in the Department of Art History at the Université du Québec à Montréal. For the last few years, I have worked as the coordinator for the Canada Research Chair in Digital Art and Literature and the NT2 Lab. As part of my duties, I co-curate online exhibitions with my fabulous colleagues, and I've been led to reflect on the issues and conditions of curating on the internet. It is therefore armed with this modest experience that I'm offering you today an introductory talk on this little-known practice, despite its greater visibility in the last few months of confinement. Disclaimers: I'm short on time, so I won't address online curation featuring digitized artworks, nor will I discuss conservation practices in new media art, which are arguably part of curation. Introduction: what is online curation? Curating in the digital age seems to be within the reach of any internet user, or paradoxically, an elite position in the art world. In response to these perceptions, Annette Decker and Gaia Tedone emphasize the considerable work and the social and technical relationship involved in setting up a web exhibition. The curator's work on the web is not limited to the artwork's selection. It involves the production of art and of the discourses to describe the artworks, and allows, according to the collaborative model adopted, to rethink power relations in an information culture. Its multiple roles involve interpretation, staging, and contextualization, like offline curating, in addition to establishing a dialogue with the technologies employed. The particularity of online curating is therefore to co-construct one's vision, according to the works, of course, but also according to the technological specificities and the environment hosting the exhibition. The online curator takes a critical or meta look at her inscription in the web environment in the manner of an offline curator and a relationship to the wide cube. Performing significant work online begins by recognizing that artworks, platforms, and people constitute a complex network of relationships. For some people, what I say may seem rather obvious, but the technical question of online curation arises in more than one way, since the space of the entire exhibition is to be configured, and with it, the curator and the artist are saying something, in addition to the works and their thematic, graphic, and spatial organization. Joa Sakrisa even attributes agency to software and the design of online exhibitions. Far from being artistic direction alone, online curating is a collaborative practice between curators, artworks, users, and machines. The panorama of online exhibitions that I have concocted for you demonstrates the ongoing concern for the contribution of the technology to the exhibition as a whole and to the aesthetic experience. Online exhibitions. In the shadow of institutional recognition, several online exhibitions have been created and relayed since the mid-1990s. I will present in tandem both pioneering and current exhibitions in order to demonstrate both the point of continuity of internet culture and its ruptures. The first online exhibitions emerged as early as 1995. The platforms that hosted them had many statuses. They allowed the presentation of works, but above all, the creation of a network for sharing and socializing. Those exhibitions were not yet curated or guided by a structuring vision. Online communities before the arrival of the web met first and foremost on listserv, which are mailing lists with various themes and threads. These lists were made up of artists and thinkers who often knew each other outside of the internet and had the opportunity to continue their discussions and exchanges online. One of the best known listserv is certainly Nettime.org, set up at the end of the 46th edition of the Venice Biennale, initiated by Geert Slavink and Piet Schultz. It has given rise to publication and physical exhibition, in addition to having brought together media art theorists concerned with emerging art practices. Rhizome, a new media art center based in New York, also started as a mailing list founded by Mark Tribe. Other listservs and discussion platforms, including The Thing, 7-Eleven, and Syndicate, have animated cyberspace with debates, discussions, and resources to describe, understand, and disseminate the art and the voices of the artist, often at the heart of these initiatives. The recent exhibition, Well, Now, What the Fuck, curated by Faith Holland, Norma Mills, and Wade Wallerstein, pays homage to these early online communities. bringing together 125 artists working in the tradition of net art. The exhibition is organized in rooms, evoking the domestic space where artists are allegedly confined in pandemic times. Each room, humorously titled, bring together GIFs and a few videos and highlight the creative and communicative potential offered by the simpler and concise form of expression on the web. The eponymous essay describes, well, now what the fuck, and as an exhibition and as a place to connect, thus reinforcing its social vocation and echoing the listservs, which broke the isolation of creators and helped build community. In Canada, the Cyber Powwow project, initiated by Skawinati, Ryan Rice, and Eric Robertson, provided access to three-dimensional chat rooms in which users were embodied by avatar with the Palace program. Cyber Powwow produced exhibitions every 2 years, modeled on the Biennale, and organized online and offline events for openings. Conceived and carried by Indigenous artists, the project innovated both in form and in content, offering, on the one hand, a platform with a three-dimensional look and allowing visitors to choose new skins and identities, and on the other end, highlighting the links between the physical and the virtual territories, which were little theorized at the time. Cyber Powwow was thus a platform for showing internet art, but also for discussion, theorization, and political mobilization, as shown by the text still available under library. Until recently, Galerie, a Montreal-based online art platform, was modeled on a three-dimensional space resembling a conventional art gallery. It was thus possible to move from the offices to the large sitting room and from the archives to the washrooms. Online exhibitions curated by the programming team are sometimes accompanied by offline lounge to bring together the community of artists and critics, such as Cyber Powwow. Other online exhibitions exploit three-dimensional universes to mimic the conventions of the museum experience or to explore other spatialities. Marios Antanasiou's exhibition Equalizer, designed by Lauren Fleck and presented during the Wrong Biennale, reflected on the link between architecture and sound by offering the spectators the opportunity to move around the floating geometric structure, while the Liminal Pavilion, curated by the Montreal-based Litot Collective, offered visitors access to videos in a Second Life-like metaverse by downloading the program, The Cluster. The exhibition Computer-Aided Curating by Eva Grubinger, produced in collaboration with Thomas Common, brought together a repertoire of entries on artworks, discussion forums, and above all, tools to personalize one's browsing experience. In the spirit of 1990s cyberculture, driven by knowledge sharing and user autonomy, the exhibition offered visitors the opportunity to become curators through the hypertextual structure of the software and the forums, thus providing an innovative way of accessing content before the launch of the World Wide Web. This approach to curating seems to anticipate Web 2.0 platforms. Image-based microblogging platforms such as Instagram, Tumblr, or NewHive, now inaccessible, rely on a selection and organization of data to create tableaux with strong visual identities. Exhibitions are thus proliferating on the web if the curator's role is restricted to data curation. However, some of these selections stand out when they are combined with critical, historical, and aesthetic reflection. This is the case of the exhibition Exhibit on Scroll by artists and curators Christina Olek and Kert Viart, hosted on Instagram. In the intellectual and conceptual tradition opened up by net artists, it explores the possibilities and constraints of the formats, as well as its interactive features. Exhibit on Scroll is best viewed on a cell phone or tablet and accentuates the gestures of scrolling and tapping in images while encouraging participants to turn the screens to appreciate the horizontal and vertical planes. Curating here implies a critical reflection on the technologies employed and how they encourage specific spectatorial experience, echoing gallery installations that slightly modify or distort the space to reveal our ways of being and moving. Artist Robert Sakrofsky's Curating U2 project is a response to this assault of the web by already configured and often private platform, whose possibilities and constraints are determined beforehand. In the exhibition Grindr, the artist sets up a platform for curating YouTube videos. Participants choose a title, copy and paste YouTube video links, and the videos are organized into tiles in a box. The grids are then collected and accessible by the entire web community, making us think about how content is organized, how we consume online videos, but also about the performance of identity on the web. Alexei Shulgin Desktop is a series of hyperlinks to artworks produced on desktops. As the manifesto states, the computed desktop embodies an interface, an extension of the senses, or a link to the outside world, and in the case of this exhibition, imposes itself as a place and as material for creation. This exhibition precedes several others that will attempt to explore the aesthetic possibilities of a particular platform, interface, or program. The Download series, under the direction of Paul Soulelis, also promotes the desktop as the primary exhibition space. The series of 7 downloadable projects gives users the opportunity to consult the work files on their own computers and aims to think about the hypermedia exhibition outside of the web browsing experience. This series creates a dialogue between the public space of the web and the private space of the computer desktop and extends the narrative life of the artworks, supported and possibly manipulated by participants. A Mystical Staircase by the Francesco Urbano Ragazzi Collective explores the rectangular format of the smartphone, a contemporary cinematic language according to the curators. The 22 artworks take different approaches to the portrait format, reminiscent of amateur recordings and photography. The exhibition takes the form of a tarot deck, and the users are invited to choose a card after formulating a hypothetical question in their minds. The tarot deck is an apt metaphor of our relationship to search engines, both omniscient and mysterious. This brief overview of online exhibition and projects speaks to the variety of interfaces, itineraries, and experiences offered to the internet user, but also, and above all, to the curator's commitment to think about the contribution of technology to the exhibition and to the visitor's experiences. The challenges of online curation. The first challenge of any curator is to select the artworks. The curator has the responsibility to select works and, by the same token, to give them symbolic and cultural value. The challenge is that the pool of online works is constantly expanding and that they are always somewhere between the fine and vernacular arts and the entertainment industry. The role of the curator is therefore all the more important since she is able to extract from the heterogeneous and profuse production on the web selections that are more accessible to the public. One of the proven methods for orienting one's choice long before the internet is naturally to gain expertise through regular monitoring of the production of online works and exhibitions. The curator of contemporary art in general is always faced with the paradox of giving historical depth and significance to emerging practices. Without the historical insight that often acts as a filter for practices, curators themselves apply these filters, giving their work an eminently political and social dimension. To the processes of selection, interpretation, and staging are added the commission, in itself a kind of advocacy of the poetic and conceptual value of a work, and the creation of a network of sociability between artists, institutions, and audiences. Open calls for projects also help to ensure that emerging artists are able to integrate these networks. The second challenge certainly stems from the singular characteristics of hypermedia artwork. Online art is composed of binary code, and its interfaces bring together images, video, sound, and text linked to the whole content of the web. Its singularity, amongst other things, derives from its capacity to simulate classical media and to be connected to the information network. Several commentators, including Levanovich, have thus decreed the advent of a post-media era. The post-media perspective is based on the observation that the arrival of digital technology softens the traditionally strong link between the identity of an art object and its medium. Critics and curators are thus led to reflect on what the works do and what they engage, rather than on what they are or represent exclusively. In the language of art historians, we then speak of processual or contextual practices, echoing performance and conceptual art, two artistic practices developed in parallel and in conversation with the computer arts of the 1960s and 70s, both precursors of internet art. We can also say that online artworks are dynamic, temporal, and site-specific. They are dynamic, intentionally or not, temporal, since they imagine and create viewing and browsing experiences that take time, and that, contrary to popular belief, are rather ephemeral, and site-specific, in that they take place on the internet and on platform with various properties. These characteristics sometimes make curatorial work difficult, because the curator must accept or attempt to control the great variability of experiences. Online curating thus draws inspirations from other offline curatorial practices whose works have similar characteristics. Curating performance art, for example, teaches us the importance of context, that is, the relationship that the artworks reveal, engage, and work with when they are activated in the museum, gallery, or public space. The curator must take into account in her research not only the artistic approach, but also think about the invisible relationships mobilized by the act of performance, be they historical, symbolic, material, or affective. The online curator must add to those considerations the agency of technology. For Sarah Cook, it is a question of developing curation in context. The curator determines the relationships to be revealed or framed through discourse and interface configuration. The other challenges faced by curators emerge from the technological apparatus. It would indeed be too easy to assert that online curating is more emancipated from the constraints of reality than offline curation. If the web allows us to free ourselves from a certain classical configuration of the exhibition space and to put other exhibition models to the test, it comes with its share of material, spatial, temporal, and political constraints. At the pre-production stage, you first have to choose an interface, a site, an application, a plugin. Often allied with a technical team, developers, or programmers, the curators determine whether they produce the exhibition space or whether they infiltrate and adapt to already established platforms. The first scenario is often more expensive. The team must develop the site, program particular functionalities if necessary, create and integrate the design, pay for a domain name, and in the long term, ensure updates. The more the team has those IT skills in-house, the more affordable the exhibition is. The advantage of this option is, of course, the creative freedom. Another option exploited to get around these technical and monetary constraints is to create exhibition on platforms such as Instagram, Tumblr, Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, Twitch, and so on. These exhibitions require curators to have a proper knowledge of the functionalities of the chosen platform in order to be able to use them effectively, since they're very opaque and for the most part can't be changed or customized. The idea here is not to create an environment, but to infiltrate one in order to reveal or hijack ways of seeing and doing, or to mobilize a particular audience. Twitch's clientele is quite different from Pinterest, for example. The choice of interface or platform also has political and social dimension. Most social networking platforms have proprietary licenses that limit the rights to use, consult, copy, and improve the code. The same licenses work in favor of corporations that often make a huge profit on the sale of the software or data generated by their massive use. Choosing a proprietary technology to exhibit means choosing to be part, critically or not, of the network and the relationship that they embody and encourage. Pioneers of net art and several contemporary artists adhere in contrast to the ideology of the free web, which opposes its privatization and values the sharing and transparency of data and code. They will then prefer to set up their own interface or website and to varying degree of commitment, avoid proprietary platforms. These power relations on the web echo very similar dynamics in the offline art world, if we think about the power of institution and alternative networks. Also, it's important to mention that not everyone has the possibility or privilege to resist GAFA online. You need to have the skills to read the code, write it, take charge of technologies, etc. What must be kept in mind is that the interface is linked to the meaning of the exhibition and the artworks. The issues of accessibility to technologies and knowledge has also have repercussions on the spectatorial experience, hence the need to properly target the audience and identify the curator's intentions beforehand. Is the exhibition aimed at the general public or an audience of insiders from the world of art or digital culture? From this perspective, does the exhibition faithfully reproduces our web browsing habits to orchestrate a more immediate experience, or it modifies them, and in doing so, lead visitors to ask questions, to search, to look, but that can also discourage? What gestures and behaviors lead us to the work? Clicks, how many clicks, downloads, creating a user account, installing a program or a plugin. In other words, the team must have a clear vision of what it wants to communicate and think about accessibility from several angles. Accessibility to the machines, to recent versions of browsers, or to the required software, to cultural mediation, and last but not least, to the works themselves within the exhibition. This last point leads us to reflect on the accessibility of attention, an immaterial resource monetized and exploited in our industrial societies. The web is the environment par excellence for a competition between advertisers and corporations for the attention of the consumer. There have been countless mentions of the attention crisis exacerbated by the multiplication of screens in our connected lives. The curator of a web exhibition must remember to hold the public's attention to some extent. Indeed, unlike traditional exhibition spaces that command a particular division of space-time, the online exhibition is never divorced from the time of living and consuming online. The entire web is always present to the eye and the mailbox a click away. The curator must therefore think about the typical length of a visit, the visual, textual, and interactive strategies for directing and capturing attention, and the limits of the frame. As with any exhibition, whether online or offline, a balance must be struck between the desire to provide a satisfying experience for viewers and the desire to explore new ideas and exhibition formats. What should be clear by now is that the spectatorial habits of the museum or the gallery do not always apply to the web, which is not the exact extension of your space, nor a simple space of mediation. It induces uses, habits, comes with its share of conventions, and mobilizes social, technical, and political relationships. Finally, let's also mention that exhibitions on the web also have an ecological footprint. Computer data centers consume a lot of energy, not to mention the economic and the human cost of the machines. My most recent curating experience sought to reduce this footprint, and in doing so, brought us to work in a logic of reduction or of slowing down, quite opposite to web practices. Far from being a nuisance, this experience revealed that innovative curatorial approaches are generated by the need to address invisible or neglected relations in the network. Online curating is therefore a practice of linking curators, artworks, machines, and the public, of embracing the context that inform and constitute an exhibition. The web allows the curators to be transparent about the workings of those networks. Some of the best curations exploit the interactive, hypertextual, and relational dimensions of the web to open and to question the exhibition space. The main question when conceptualizing an exhibition should thus be, what relations, symbolic, material, technical, political, affective, are at the core of my curatorial approach? Merci. I would like to thank Molior for inviting me to speak, DeepL for rough translation, and my friend Alexandra Martin for proofreading. If you're curious, there's a whole bibliography to be consulted. Thank you.